So, Civil War, 1861 to 1865. Quickly, this is our last thing, but we're just going to get into the first 2 years of the Civil War. Kind of skip to the South did a great job winning the first 2 years of the Civil War. Okay, but the problem was the South broke down. They had many disadvantages. So here, just to quickly look at it, you have the Confederacy on the left, the Union on the right. Okay, the United States of America on the right, the Confederate States of America on the left. Okay. Here's the quick breakdown. This is the uniforms. But the first states to secede were South Carolina, right? So if you look right here, we have border states: Virginia, Kentucky, Missouri, okay, uh, Maryland. These are border states. Confederate states are all in gray, okay. Border states could go either way, all right. Conflict went from April of 1861 to 1865, okay. Advantages to the Union North. Okay, first off, population, much larger population. Okay, most of your factories are in the north. Okay, huge transportation system, double the size of the South with the railroad system. Okay, the Navy was controlled by the North. Okay, that means you own the sea. All right, you can use blockades to stop importing and exporting goods from the South. Um, Eventually they fight an offensive war, and that's how they are eventually able to win. They take the war to the South and decimate the South. Um, U.S. Grant, obviously one of the greatest generals of all time in American history. South had better generals with Robert E. Lee, however. Okay, so the South had better leadership. Okay, Robert E. Lee, Thomas Jackson. Okay, um, defending is always easier than going on the offensive, right? And that was a big part of what actually undid the South was they started an offensive war and tried to go into the North after with the Battle of Gettysburg. That's the turning point of the war you're going to see. Okay, farmers fight better than factory workers. They know the lay of the land. Okay, and they had more farmers in the South. Okay, the economy is very profitable in the South. Okay, based on cotton exports, and we also know that tobacco was very profitable. But we all know that cotton was the king with the cotton gin. Okay, way smaller population, under half the size of the 22 million in the North. They had 9 million. So the North had a huge advantage with factories, transportation, and population. Okay, so the North should have won this war. The Union should have won, and they did. Okay, and the South had a hard time getting goods and little munitions, which you need bullets and cannonballs to win a war. Skipping the Great Britain part, and we'll go right to first 2 years of the war. The it's not even close. The South is absolutely smashing the North. But on January 1st of 1863, Abraham Lincoln, he issues the Emancipation Proclamation. This freed all slaves. So we're just going highlights here, right, folks? First 2 years of the war, the South only had better leadership. Okay, they were fighting a war in the South and on the border states. Okay, but in 1863, to start the year, Abraham Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation. This is going to free states that had seceded from the Union. Obviously, the war goes on for another 2 years almost, right? So it's not like the Southerners freed all their slaves, but this is the first actual step towards freeing the slaves. Okay, the war goes another 2 years, right? When they do eventually gain freedom, but him issuing this really, really, really kicks the war up because now, states' rights, they federally outlaw slavery. Okay, this is the first step of federally outlawing slavery. Okay, and here's what happens. July of 1863, Robert E. Lee launches an offensive into the North, Pennsylvania, into Gettysburg. Okay, this is the turning point of the war. Okay, the felt like they needed to expand the war and take the war into the North. They didn't need to do that. They could have actually defeated the North if the South had just kept this a war of attrition, a war in border states. They would have won. Okay? All right? And they went to try and take Northern Territory in Pennsylvania. This was the beginning of the end for the Southern forces, right? So what happens is the Union mows down 15,000 Confederate troops that try and advance into Gettysburg. Okay? They are sent back. He's defeated at Gettysburg over a 3-day battle. Okay, one of the largest one-day battle. I want to say it's the largest casualty in one day for the United States of America. Everybody who died in the Civil War was an American. Whether you're North or South, you're considered. All the casualties are American casualties. Still the most casualties in a war to this day, the Civil War. Okay, largest battle in the history of the Western Hemisphere, Gettysburg. Over 100,000 people died in 3 days. That's crazy. And this is the last time the South attempted to invade the North. And it once again, it spelled the beginning of the end. Here, July 1st to the 3rd of 1863. Turning point of the war. Now, Lincoln gives the Gettysburg Address. Okay? This is a huge morale booster for the North. Okay? Gettysburg is the turning point. The Gettysburg Address gives the North and inspires troops to really strike into the heart of the South and attack the South. And that's when the campaign now turns from a defensive campaign to an offensive campaign where the North really starts to strike hard, deep into the South. Okay? Obviously, they start with steel gunboats, ships. Technology is going to change the Civil War. The Monitor is going to be a ironclad ship that cannot be sunk, right? Their cannons are going to be larger, longer range. Okay, this is going to change war. Okay, first metal ships in the world, couldn't sink them. Okay, we're going to go Battle of Vicksburg. Okay, so 4th of July, 1863, directly after the Battle at Gettysburg, right? This is won by Ulysses S. Grant, and this is going to begin to cut the South in half and gives the Union control of the Mississippi River. At this point, Grant and the Union armies are going to destroy everything in the South. This is called scorched earth. If it's there and it's in front of them, it's a home, it's a barn, they're going to burn it to the ground. Okay? So, they're going to start destroying the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia. General Sherman is going to be given the task of burning the city of Atlanta and scorching earth from Atlanta all the way to the ocean. Marches through Georgia and destroys most of everything in his path. Fields, crops in the fields, they scorch the earth. And this is what's really going to break the South. Okay, the North is going to break the South with scorched earth, and there's a painting of it. All the railroads, they took them, they bent all the rails. Piled rails and stacks. You can't transport troops, you can't transport goods. And this is going to be the scorched earth policy. African Americans in the military, okay? They were in there before and after the Emancipation Proclamation, okay? Now, African Americans are going to start to fight actively for the North and the Union. They could not fight for the South. If they did, it was very sparsely, okay? Now they're going to start fighting for the side that wants to help them gain their freedom after the Emancipation Proclamation. You're going to see an uptick in African Americans taking up arms against the Confederate States of America for the North. So the beginning of the end, and you can see this is a picture of the 54th Regiment in Warner, South Carolina, in July of 1863, the African American Regiment of Union troops. All right. So the South is decimated. Okay. U.S. Grant takes Richmond, Virginia, which is the capital of the South. The capital of the North is Washington, D.C. They're under 100 miles apart. And in April of 1865, the war started in April of 1861 at Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina. It will end at Appomattox Courthouse with General Lee's surrender on April 9th, 1865 to Ulysses S. Grant. All Confederate troops were forced to swear allegiance to the North and the Union, and the terms of service were lenient. They were able to go back to their homes if they weren't destroyed. And the North defeats the South in April of 1865. The issue of states' rights to choose whether they want to have slavery or not have slavery are solved. The states' right to choose slavery is revoked. And the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution are issued shortly thereafter. 13th Amendment outlaws slavery. After 4 bloody years, the South was defeated by the North in an offensive war where the most Americans in U.S. history in a war have died because everybody who was there was an American that died. Okay. Over 600,000 Americans died in the Civil War. What issue is solved? Okay. Well, we're going to have a big land boom out west. Slaves are freed. Okay. And we're going to enter Reconstruction of America and the American South post Civil War 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Homestead Act is going to pass. That is going to bring tens of thousands of Americans west. Whose lands are they going to take? Of course, they're going to take Native American lands. Okay? Union Pacific Railway will connect the East and the West, and America will eventually be connected. Okay? And Northern industry is protected even more, and it will grow even more. The South is out of sorts for 30, 40, 50 years trying to deal with the loss of labor with slaves, and they kind of replaced the system with sharecropping, where they are going to loan freed slaves land and money, and eventually this system, there will be a series of Jim Crow laws that are oppressive towards freed slaves, and the South takes a really long time to get up to racial equality that the North has. Okay, and it's a battle and it's a struggle, but this lasts into the well into the 1900s. We have a single currency. We issued war bonds, okay, and an introduction of an income tax on people's taxes, okay. You have Lincoln. Every time in war, folks, people tend to we have rights that are limited in war, whether it's the press, whether it's people's ability to travel freely, their speech. This happens. It's happened in World War II. You can see it happening now. We have a coronavirus outbreak, and people are they're being told to stay home. There's orders that states governors are giving. Okay, time of crisis, you tend to lose civil liberties. In the election of 1864, obviously, it's only in the North because the Confederate States of America weren't a part of America, and Lincoln easily defeats General McClellan. All right, Southerners had no vote here because they weren't a part of the United States of America. We have one country again, the United States of America. The Confederate States of America is gone. The abolition of slavery is a outcome of the Civil War. federal government, states' rights. States do not have the right to choose whether they want to have slaves or not. We're an industrial nation because the industrial side won, the North, which had factories. We still do have a large agricultural population, but the side with all the factories won, the North. We are now more tied to being Americans than Northerners and Southerners. Western expansion boomed, and the South, as I said, we were culturally, they were economically, they were actually physically. If you look at the structures, homes, they were in a bad spot at this point in time. So the North wins and the South suffers. Reconstruction. There's a deep resentment of the North.